So we were looking at the required field validator here, right? So in this required field validator, you can actually mention the control for which you want to show the error, right? So here, how can I give the control hold this? So here you have some property of a request validator called control validator. So here you can see it asks for which for which control you want to validate. So let's please select the text box one, because whatever type of text box I select, right? If it is blank or something, this will validate us automatically and will throw it. So let's say here I can give the message, what message you want to show if this text box doesn't contain anything. So let's say please enter some text. So this is the error which I want to show. Okay. I can see this will be shown whenever it is blank. Let's run this page and see how it works. So here let's just click on this. Okay. Now here we have a text box control. We have required validator. So let's go back and say I want to validate for required validator here, and let's give the message as please enter text, right? And in button click, right? So let's first see how it is working. So here in this page, let me just drag and drop the combo box. We have already seen, which is a drop down list normally. We have already seen the static fields, which how we can actually add, right? You can add 8 items and you can add more items here, right? And so this time, so this combo box will have your, this drop down list will have your ID and Reddit server tags. And inside you can also add your ASP items. If you remember, we have already created this, right? Where as you add your items from here, right, which is your 8 items, and it will be added to here. Or you can also add your list items to your drop down list, even from code also, right? Now let us see how we can actually add it through a data source. So there are different ways how you can actually do that, right? Either you can directly go to your combo box. We have a choose data source, right? Click on that. You can see there are no data sources as such here, which are present. But now what I want to do is I want to get, let's say in our databases, right? Let's say in college we have something called students table, right? So in students table we want to get all the student names displayed on combo box, right? So this is going to be common across different controls, right? This data source which you are going to create, right? It can be used for drop down list or list box or review, anything you want. Fine. Now let's say this is a student name, which is a single column you want to populate in here. Now here there are two ways. So either you can add directly data source from here, right? Or what you can do, you can actually add your data source first. So in data you have SQL Server data source here, right? You can actually drag and drop, and then you can set the data source here. So both will be the same. Now let me just add data source from here itself. So here you can see there are no data sources being configured in the current page, right? And now let me select a new data source. You can see it will give an option to select which data source you want. Now based on the version of .NET you're using, right, it will actually give. It will give database one link. If you have any link, object already being created, right? You can actually connect with link your entity, your XML file now. So now let's say I want to get database, right, which is supported by ADO. You can see, right, this is completely supported by ADO. And let's say this is my SQL Server data source 1. Let's say this is SQL Server data source 2. I'm just giving what it data source name is. Click on OK. Now you'll actually get a window where you have to give which database you want to actually work on. Now you can see I don't have the college database configured. Let me click on new connection here, and now you can see the setup, everything is same, right? As you have seen the setup of configuring connection strings or entity, right, before getting connections and all, you will see the similar windows over here. So let it get the databases which I have. Now let's first select the server. Now this is the server and it's a Windows authenticated one. And let me click on drop down now and say this is a college. You can test it, you get successful and click on OK. Now this is my connection I want to do. So if you expand the connections, you can see you have this server, initial catalog is so and so, and integrated security is true, which is Windows authentication. Click on next. Yes, I want to save this in my application configuration file. Click on next. Now this is a new window which we have. This is a query builder window, right? So you can select any table in the database college, right? You have if you have many tables, you can actually select a table whatever you want. Now this is actually working in live, right? As you change your columns and everything, right, you will actually see this. So here, either you can select everything. You can see here, select start from students is something which will give you all the items you want, or you can actually go for specific one. Let's say I just want student name, right? Because I want to show student name. Now you can see in this query builder, right? You can actually specify or you can build your queries. You can actually say where condition, right? Column you can see, let's say roll number, operator greater than, right? You have many things. You have many operations which you can actually do. You can see source, right? Either it is from cookie or a query string, right? You can directly build up your where condition, right? And you can actually get the data directly, right? And you can see order by, sort by what exactly you want. Right? And you have an option return only unique rows. When I click on unique rows, now you can see it will get you a distinct student names from students. Because you can see there are duplicate names too. And that's the reason why I'm saying get only unique. Also, if you have a SP, if you have a stored procedure, right, you can actually go ahead with the SP. You can see here, right? Or also a SQL statement. When you select this one, right, then you will have to provide a SP name, or you can write your own query to get data. Right? Either way you can use. So let's say I selected this part and click on next. Now you can see if you want to test that, right, you click on text query, you can see this is a live data you are actually getting. Right? If you add if anything else is added in this table, right, so those items will be populated here. Now let's say yes, this is done. This is the data source. This is the data which I want to display. Right, with one column at once. Click on finish. Right? Now here you have two different things again. You can see as you have selected only one column, right, you can see it will populate only one. Right? Anytime if you want to change the data source, you can change. I'll show you how to do that. So here in drop-down list there are two different properties which we have to set the value. One is the field display value and the field or the value property and the text property. So what data to display is, let's say you want to display student name, and what is the value to get whenever you select any item? I'm giving the same. So sometimes you can give a student name and roll number as a display and value of the selected item. You can do different, right? So let me click on OK. Now this data source is configured with students table. Now you can see this is a data bound now. Right? Now if you go to web.config, right, our connection string will be created. You can see here that our connection string is created, which is college connection string, including your complete data source and other details. Right? So let's get back here. Now let's run this page and see if the data is populated. Set as start page, click on run. So here you can see we have the data. Arun, Ben, Kiran, Ram, and Sam. So let's quickly add one more user here, and let's see whether we are going to get it or not. Let's say it's 9 here. Student name let's give something like some other name, right? Let's do something. Phone number. Let's do something else. Create data and let's okay. Right? I am just inserting it now. If you go back, now you have one new user called here. Right? So let's go back to this page and refresh this. And you can see this data will be populated. Right? So this will be your live data now, right? As soon as you change anything, right, you remove anything or you add anything, your property will be set. So this data source, concept, right, you can use for multiple controls, right? So let's say I have one more control called list box. Let me take one more control here. So let me just take. So this is a data source. It will not be displayed to this will not be displayed in a page, but it will actually stay as a data source component. So click in data source. Now you can see this is again unbound, right? If you want to choose, you can choose. Let me click on choose. Yeah, you already have this. Let's say again you have this box, your student name, display, and the value is also present. Click on it. Now this is a bound mode. Let's run this. Right? You can see all the data we have. And so this way you can actually use your data sources. Now anytime you want to change data source, right? You can change it. You have to configure back to the data set. Now you can see here when I say configuring, yes, I want to configure, I want to get everything next. Right? And let's say I don't want unique, I want everything to be retrieved. Right, next and test query, you can see it will give you the complete data set you have from database. Click on finish. Now does it affect this combo box and list box? Let's run this and see. Now when you run it right, and see, now you can see there won't be any problem when you say change data source. Right? Now we changed this data source, but we made sure that the column which is used by list box and combo box are also a part of the data. Right? The student name is part of the query here. Right? So here you can see when I go ahead and configure data source, you can see the same connection string, right, where it is specifically done. Now how to actually make it live now? Let me click on refresh schema. Right, to actually get the new one which we actually got. Right, same way, refresh schema, we have save this up and debug this. Right, now you can see you are getting your duplicates. If you remember, when we changed the data source, right, it was populating distinct values. Right. So unless you refresh or rerun it again using after refreshing your schema, right? So these will not be refreshed. Right? So this is how you can actually set data sources. Right? So in your SQL data source, right, you can actually connect to mainly SQL Server, right? And this internally uses your ADO objects to connect to SQL Server clients, right? And now we can actually see one more property here that specify a query, right? Now here it will actually give you a query builder. You can write your query over here, right? Or you can call the SP. You can see in stored user, right? It will actually retrieve all the SPs you have. Now we know that we have something called get students SP, right? Which will retrieve the. Let me just open this SP. If you have many SPs, right, your data source will be automatically refreshed. So what happens whenever you add any new object to it, right? When I say object, it's a DB object. Your SPs, tables, functions, these are normally called as a data objects. Now you can see this is returning some set students and so on. So let me just comment this and let's say I want only one set to be returned. Now you can see it will give you a complete set of students. Right? Now let's go to next. Now you can see it is returning so and so. Right? Now here it says when I'm using these, right, these are different parameters I have. Right? Let's say default value is 4. Right? Name I'm taking something like when I say 4 here, 4 is round. Right? Let's take either you can give default, don't worry about this, or you can actually select whether it is from query string or anything. I will see how to actually make it query string. Right? Our session will see that part. Right? And flag, let's say I'm giving it as well. Click on next. Now test query. You can see you will already get it. Now let's say parameters are same. Click on OK. It will get this and your actual data will be retrieved. So this is how you can actually set your SP if you want, or you can also run your query whatever you want. Now this will give you option to write update, insert, delete, or any query you want. And based on the data source you're actually setting. This will be this data source part. Now flag is one of the parameter we actually mentioned in RSP, right? We just took this flag as just to increase parameters. We are not using that flag anyways. Fine? Yeah. So that is how you can actually write your own query if you have query. Right? Now obviously you can have a query builder. Right? This will help you. This is a very good tool you have in here. Right, which will help you. I hope in this type of window you have seen in Access database, right? Based on the things you are actually selecting, right? The query will change whether which type of data you are using. Right? This will help you in building your query. You can see sort order, right? You can see filter. You have ordered by, right? You can use. But normally, if you are good at writing queries, you can directly write it. So this is how you can configure your data source, right? SQL data source mainly I'm talking about, right? Where you can actually set your data source to multiple controls, right? Now this is your part. We'll get back to this data source again when we are checking out the grid view. It's a completely different thing which you are going to see in grid view, which is like a multiple details. How to show multiple details in it. So maybe we'll see the grid view part in tomorrow's class, right? Which is we have to see many things like how grid view will be populated, how it will be edited, how it will be how we can actually use it for live edit and update things, delete rows. Right? We can use grid view is a very good control which you have in. We'll see that part. Fine. Now here when talking about specific to combo box now, right? So we have seen the combo box part where in properties we have already seen the selected index changed and we were able to get the data we selected. Now let's see the list box. So in list box also you have selected index changed, right? Here because you can select multiple things. Let me run this. Let's see this part. So here you can see by default, right, I can select only one, only one item in list box, right? So whatever item you have selected, if you want to get it, right, you can actually write that code. So let me go back. Let me take a button here and a label. So label by default, let's say I'm not giving anything. And for button, let's say you want to give it as something. Double click on this. Now here, so you have your list box, right? Dot. You have something called selected item. Now the selected item, right, will actually give you all the item which you have selected in the list box. Okay, let me say it as label. Now we have a selected item here which will give you a list item. Can you see here? So each and every list box item is nothing but a list item. The same as your drop down list. Each item you have a list item. So in list item you can get your details as text. Right? So this will give you the item selected and its text. Let's see how it is working now. Let me select Kiran and click on data. Now you can see it will here. And it will actually persist the data you have selected. Now let me select Vinu here. Right. So again, there is a postback thing happening. Right. Whenever you click on this, right, it is actually posting a request to the server, right? And we are caching, the data whatever you have selected in list box, right, will be saved in a view state, right? Obviously, if you select anything like let's say you selected Ben, click on data, see what happens. Your Ben will be selected, right, and the selection will stay at top, right? Because it's a view state which will keep view state of this control will keep the selected item, right? And whenever any postback happens or not, it will make sure that your data is selected. Same way, let's select Vinu over here, click on data. So for every postback, right, your data will be changed, but your view state will save the original value which you have saved here. That's the reason why even in postback, view state makes sure that whatever controls data you have selected will be saved. Right? So this is your list box and how you actually get it. Now let's go to the page. Now let me select on this list box, and in this list box you have something called select mode or selection mode. Right? Now you can see it's a single. You can also have a multiple selection. Right? In a list box you can select multiple items if you want. Right? Now how can I get all those multiple items here? Now in here you can see in this box, right, whenever you have this box, let's run this and see whether we are able to select multiple items or not first. Now here you can see I have Sam. Press on control, right, press on the control and click on items to select or unselect your data. Right, when you select, right, you can see it will use Sam because we are actually getting the first element selected. Now let's select Kiran first. And Arun and Ram, you can see here. It will first get the item, whatever is selected at the top. That is the selected item. Now here, what we can do here is, in our list box, we have something called list box 1 dot selected item dot items. So this will actually give you all the items you have in the list box, right? And it will give you each list item we have, right? So what I will do is, let me go ahead and create for each here. Let's say this is a list item we have in the collection of your list box of items. Right. Now here this will give you each list item. Now in each list item, let's say whatever you have selected, you want to set it to label, right? So initially, let's say I want to set my label text as null, and then I want to append data. So here, let's say I have a label is equal to your item dot text. And let's say I'm going to give some space. Now here, if I just loop on items, right? Let's run this and see what happens here. So you will get your data and select two things, data. You will see, you will actually get everything. Right? because we are going through each and every, your items will go to each and every item. You will get the data and it will print just the, text over here. But what is important is, whatever is selected, we just want that data, right? So in that case, what to do? Here in your list item, you have one property called selected, right? If it is selected, then consider it, otherwise don't consider it. As simple as that, right? So let's run this program. So let's say I haven't selected anything. Now you can see it will not give anything. By default, right? We have nothing as selected. Now let's select one, it will give you Sam. Select Sam and Kiran, right? Let's see I selected Sam, Kiran and Minu. So in this way, you can actually select multiple items in the list, and all the items whatever are selected, you can actually get it. Right? So that's how you can actually get the data from list items. Right? So now here you have one more thing to understand. The behavior, right, will be same as combo box, but your main difference between combo box and list item is that you can have multiple selection option in list box, whereas you will not have that option in the combo box. That's the main difference we have. But the way how you work with data being populated, right, will be same. Right? That is where list box and combo box. Now let's go ahead and see the things here. We have seen image button, and now let's see one important thing before we move on to the next one. So we'll see the main navigation techniques. So there are different navigation techniques which we have in .NET ASP, .NET mainly, right? So here we have always seen one type of navigation using our hyperlink. If you remember, let's go to page 2, or sorry, default, right? We have used one button, to image button, right, to navigate to one URL, right? Same way in our page 2 we have used a hyperlink. Now these are direct controls which we can use to move from one page to another page, right? But apart from that, we sometimes we may be using these direct controls to move on, or sometimes we may have to code to move in between pages. Right? Now let's see all the techniques which we have in here. So we have on the top, right, we have 4 different techniques to work with, right, in which we have already seen the hyperlink and all. So first technique is using your response dot redirect. Fine, response dot redirect is the first one which we have. Now let's see how we can actually use this, and including this, right, we'll see a parallel thing called query string. Right, what exactly is a query string, and what is our navigation technique first one, which is response dot redirect. Now mainly navigation technique is something which is used to move from one page to another page, or a same server, or posted across the servers, right? But the base usage which you want is the same, right? Now let me create fresh pages here. We can create page form. Create page 5. And let me create one more page. So page 6. So now, so here I'm not going to use any control to actually use like hyperlink or button. So rather, we'll see how to navigate to tools. Now in my page 5, let me take a button, right, and let me call it as go to page 6, some name, and here let me take up the label and let me call it as this is page 5. Right, so this is the label you have, and if you want, yes, you can increase the size. Now here you can see you can actually give the size. Let me give it as X large. This is page 5, right? So same thing, go to page 6 and let me drag and drop the label and call it as this is page 6. And now let's give the size as X large. I think our page 5. So let's go and let me just make page 5 as start page. So in this button, right, let me double click so that I can get the event. Now first thing, let me create an exception handling part here, and then I can use response. You can see response is the property of my page, right? Dot, we have something called a redirect method where I can give a URL. Now first thing, let's give, right, internal to the same server. When I say internal to the same server, which is in the same machine or same application, we are going to route to some other page. So URL will be, you can use a tilt operation first. Tilt is nothing but your absolute path, right, which means your complete path till web controls. And if you are hosting it in some other folder, right, so your tilt will actually come till your controls. And let's say I want to go to page 6.aspx. This is your page, right? Now response or redirect will actually redirect our current page from page 5 to page 6.aspx. Let's run this. So this is a page 5 here. Click on, now you can see this is page 6. Right? So this is your navigation happens. Now you can see even your URL changes. Right? We are at page 5.aspx. When I click on go to page 6, right, you can see if you go to page 6 and your data will be rendered whatever is there in your page. Right? So that's how it actually works. Now to improvise this, let's say in your page 5, let's say there are some controls, or let's take few text boxes maybe. Now let me just take a simple text box, and here let me call it as you can already type in, let's say it is a name here, right, and let's say something called some roll number, right. Let me take one text box. So this one, let me call it as text box, right. So to actually go with the nomenclature, right, so always your controls naming should be maintained as a proper name, right. As we have learned in our C#, if you remember, we used to give variables A, B and C, right, but we understood that that is for training we have used, right. But for real time, you should always use the actual naming combinations, right. This is the best practice use. For controls, normally how do we do is, let's say if it is a text box, we normally give txt extension, which is a prefix, and then give the actual usage of this. So let's say this is some name, which is your txt name. Same way it's roll number, right? Give it as small txt, which is camel casing, and give it as roll number. Roll. Let's say roll. Now my two different text boxes have got ID names. So here if you go, let's say I want to keep them in a same here but different that with a break here. Now Now you can see it will be at the same place. Now here let's give some space here so that it will actually sit in the same. So these spaces actually it will include your space. As you answer, you can see NBE space, right? That's why we are just checking out the data part here. Now here you may provide some data here, let's say, right? When you provide some data, let's say you want to transfer this to other page, right? It may happen that you want to transfer your name and roll number to page 6 and display here. First, let's see how we can actually do that. In page 6, whenever you enter any text, right? Now let's say I'm taking a string as name is equal to, you have txt name, you can see dot text, right? Let's say you have a string roll is equal to txt roll number dot text. Now, how can I actually make this pass it in a query string? Now, first part, either you can actually pass in a query string, or there are other techniques to pass this data. Now, first let's see the query string part. Now, here, in order to query string, add a query string to your actual URL, right? We normally use something called question mark. I hope you would have already seen, few sites. Now here, we have to pass your name and role, right? Which we have seen. We just saw it in our Google page, which you have seen, right? Now you can see here when I click on this, you have seen something like, there will be a question mark here, right? Which will actually take us to some. Now in your page, current page, it will read this query string and then it will give us a. Let me copy this part and paste it here. Now let's understand. Let's understand different things which we have in a URL. Now the first part of URL, right, is something which will give you which protocol it is using, right? It says HTTPS, or let's say HTTPS or HTTP, let's say, which means it is using your hypertext transfer protocol to communicate with. And then you will have an actual domain, which is your www.google.co.in, right? And next you can have something called pages. Let's say you have something called search.asp, let's say, right? Which is, you will have a slash here, and let's say you have search. Now this is your page, right? Which means you are actually giving the actual resource name or a page name, right? And if you have any internal folders, as you can give, let's say you have an internal folder called something like pages, right? This is your domain. This is your subdirectory you have. In this subdirectory, you have a resource, and this is a resource which is the actual page. User is trying to retrieve. To this URL or to this page, what we are doing is we are providing some query string. Now this query string is basically intended to provide to this page, because now this query string is being read by this page and it will understand your key and value. Now you can see, if you go to query string now, you will see different things here. So this is one in query string, you have this one item which is separated with ampersand. This is another item which is separated by another ampersand, right? And we have one more, right? You can see these are different, key and value pairs, right, which are built. This is a key is equal to value. This is a key and is equal to value. A key and a value, which are separated by ampersand. Ampersand is a separator of a query string, right? So this is separating a query string, and you can see that there are 3 different values which are passing as soon as you type in something, right? Same way here you can pass your question. Now I want to pass name and role. How can I pass? Here I can, let's say I want a key here. Now let's say my key is NME is a key. You can take anything. You can take name directly or NME, anything. Let's say, to keep it short, let's say I'm moving it as NME is equal to and percent my role, let me call it as role is equal to. Now here, what is NME? I'll just add this string called name here, and role I'll add something called role. This is my first. Question mark will actually make says that your query string is starting now. where you have two different string parameters, query string parameters. Your enemy, which is name, and your role, which is store, right? And this will be sent to your page 6. Now, how to read? We'll see that part. First, let's run this and see how your query string or your URL will look like. Let's run this part. So we are in page 5.aspx. So let's give some name and let's give role number 1. Let me click on page, go to page 6. Now see the URL. Let me copy this URL and paste it in here. This is a URL we have. Now you can see your HTTP is a protocol we are using. Your local host and this port is a actual domain you are connecting to, right? And you can see your page 6 is nothing but your resource we have. And you can see your query string started where we have two different things. Name is equal to Sri and your role is equal to 1. Now everyone can see your query string. Now if you are using this right now, you can see this can be seen by the end user. You can see you have enemy is equal to Sri and your roll number is equal to 1. So this is called as your query string. Now I'm passing query string through a technique called response.redirect over here. Fine. Sorry. Now let's run this. We have already executed and you can see here. Now how to read this query string in my page is a question. Right? Now let's go to page 6 now. Now in my page 6, let's take a label. Let me take a label here. Right? So let's say here I'm gonna take it as name so and so. So this label, let me give property. So it's a label, right? So you can actually remove all the vowels in it and you can make it as LBL. Right? Obviously, in any word, if you remove labels, right, it will actually give you a short form of that word, right? So let's say it's a name and remove by default text. I don't want any default text here. Let me take one more label. Let me call it as LBL role, which is roll number, and let me remove the default text, right? And let me call it as role, right? So you have these. So you have a name and role in your page 6. Now let's see how we can actually populate them through query string. Now let me go to code view. Now in my code view I have a page load here. So let's take and start here. Now here, how can I read my query string is using your response, which is called as HTTP response, right? Now this is the HTTP response part which I am getting. Dot, we have an option called sorry, not response, request. Dot request. Now what is request here? Now request and response traverse from one page to another page, right? Now whenever you move from page 5 to page 6, right, which means from page 5 the request is moving or transferred to page 6, and that is something which is your HTTP request. And what is response? Whenever you are loading this page 6, right, that loading part, whatever you are doing is something which you are doing on response part, right? That's the reason why, if you remember, we normally do something called response. Let me comment this. The response.write. Why do we do this? Because we want to write on my content. That's the reason why I'm actually using this response keyword, right? So here I have query string. Now this is a property. Query string is a property which will actually give you the collection items of all the query strings here. Now you can see here this will give you something called system.collections.specialized.name value collection. So let's take that system.collections.specialized.name value collection. Fine. So where, let me call it as data is equal to request. Fine. Now this will actually read all the query string part. Now this will actually catch all the query string part, will be divided into key and values and will be saved. Now let's get your you have label name, right? Dot text. I want to assign this to, let's say you have data is your item of. You can see you can actually give either a name. If you know the name of the key, you can give, or you can also give index. Now index will be like, it's a 0 and 1 and so on. Let's give the name. Name is the best one to use whenever you are actually working with query strings, right? So this is your data, right? This will give your data, and same as we have LBL role dot text is equal to, we have data. Let's say the next one, which is role, right? The role is a key which I'm sending from my role number, right? So let's run this and see how this happens now. So this is your page 5. Let me give roll number 1 and you have name. Click on this. Now you can see you have a name and role in page 6, right? So this is this completely, now this page blindly, believe in your query string. Let's say if I change anything here, if I edit something, I can see I'm editing my query string and enter. See here, whatever query string gives, right, it will take blindly, right? So as soon as you change your query string, if your query string is understandable, if anyone changes the query string, right, you can actually read that easily if you are using that, right? Now that is something which is a query string where you are transferring your data from page 5 to page 6, the first week, right? Now this is how you can transfer, or you can navigate from one page to another page, right? And you can actually transfer data from one page to another page. So this is something where we are using something called the response.redirect and text. Right? Now this is the first technique. Now you have a second technique called server.transfer. Right? So the main working model of response.redirect is, so we are actually using this response.redirect in a button file, and we know that whenever we click on a button, what will happen? Your postback happens from your client web, right, to server. There will be one request heading to the server, and it will get a postback to the page again, and then it will send this request to new page, which means there will be two different calls which will happen when you use response.redirect. Fine. Now this is similar to, like, you have a postback. You actually went to the server. When I click on button, right, it is a post method which will be getting triggered, right? It will get the response, and in the response, what we are doing, we are redirecting the response page to some other page. That is what we are doing. Which means it will again take the request and go to the new go to the server and then get the new resource to render it. Fine. So this is how it actually takes two different rounds to populate a page. But anyways, your model anyways will work in the same way, like you have your name, role names and all. Right. Now let's see what happens when we actually go ahead and do a server.transfer. Now this is a single route. As soon as it triggers server transfer, right, your postback or those stuff will not be there. It will directly command your server to actually route to the page you are going to provide here. Right? So let's see how it works. So let me go back here. Now the same button click, let's do one thing. Let me use server. I can see server is a property which is a HTTP server utility of page.server dot we have transfer, and you can use a path. Now again, you have to give a tilt to actually give a path here. Okay, so here you have a tilt at your page 6.aspx, fine, where I'm actually transferring data from my current page to page 5. Not transferring, I mean actually I'm moving from page 5 to page 6, right? So here you have a page 6 here, so let's comment this query string part and we'll come back to this later. Let's see how this works. So you have page 5, click on go. Now you can see you came to page 6. Now check one very important here. Check the URL. You are still page 5, right? Now your URL will not change, but your content of page 6 will be rendered as a part of the same page, right? But you can see you are still in a page 5, right? Which means internal to this page you are actually rendering the content of page 6. That is something which is a server transfer, right? Your URL will not be changed, right? Now, the next method is, let's see how we can actually read data from page 5 to page 6. Now, how did we do that in our previous response redirect is through a query string, right? Even now we can actually do it from query string also, but before that let's see other techniques. Now here you have something called, you can actually read direct data from controls from page 5 to page 6. Right? How? Let's see that. So let's say you have a label 1, so you have LBL name dot text is equal to, no, even before that you have something called, how can I read page 5 is, you have something called request. In a request, instead of reading query string, we have something called form. Now when you say request.form, right, this will actually give you all the controls which you already had in all the controls data, right, which you have in the previous page, which is from the page where you're actually getting the request, right? And see, this form will return you as a collection name value set. Same, it will return the same. So let's take this data 1 is equal to request.form. Fine. And here in your data 1, how can I use it? Is now you can see either you can do index of the entry or just name. Now let's go back to page 5. Now you can see your first control name is TXT name. Let's say I want to get the value of TXT name. Right? Same way you have LBL row text is equal to, you have data 1 or let's say you have a roll number. Let's go and click on roll number. Right? So we are actually getting details from request.form, which will return all the all the variables from form 2, right, which is my this page to page 6. Right? Let's run this and see how it is. So here let's give some roll number. Click on go to page 6. You can see SAM. Now you can see there is no query string concept or nothing you have, right? You don't have anything here, and this page concept, right, will actually work if you preserve your page, right? So by default, your server.transfer will preserve the page. Now, when we say preserving the page, which means you're preserving the variables of a page. Now, if you go to page 5, you have one more overridden method called preserve form. If you make it false, right, then it won't actually give you anything. So let's run this. I'm actually making it false. I don't want to preserve complete variables. Maybe it is overhead, let's say. And let me use some here. When I click, now you can see you won't get anything there. They will be blank because you are not preserving the data of it, right? So in this case, if you don't want to preserve, you have one more technique to read the data, which is, let's look at the different way how to do that. So you have something called page option. You have a page attribute where you can actually get something called previous page property. Now this previous page will give you an object of the page from where you are getting a request, right? And this previous page will return you a page object again. Let me take a page, call it as BGD is equal to source. Right? So from this, how can I get data? Let me use LBL name dot text is equal to, you have page dot. Now when I'm getting all the whole object of page, right, I can actually find a control. Now find a control of ID. Now let me give ID as this name, because this is my control, right? And this control is nothing but text box, right? So you have to typecast it to text box so that I can get the text of it, dot text. Now this is how you can read your previous page, right, and get the data. Now this can be done only in server.transfer. But it is not possible to do this in our response or data. Now it won't allow, right? Server.transfer will actually retain your previous page object. Right? Same way, let me call LBL row dot text is equal to your page dot the find control of, let's take the roll number ID, right? And this is my text box control. Let me typecast it to text box text. Now this will actually give you a roll number into this. So let's run this and see how it works out. So give some names, give some ID, click on basics. You can see. So we are able to delete. Fine. So this is something, if you don't want to preserve the values, if it is overhead to preserve, then you can go to the previous page object, right, which you can actually catch it in our page object and you can read it. Fine. So that is how we can actually read things from here. And also, if you want to use a query string option, you can always do that. Let's say I don't want to use any of the techniques, but I want to go through the query string part itself. Now let's use this query string part NME and whatever we're using here with this. Right? Now this is my complete page transfer I'm using. Run this. Some data, basics. You can see, right? We have a time and 6. Now here you can see it won't populate your query string. We are reading data from query string, but as it stays in the same page, right? It is not actually completely moving to the next page, but the URL will not change. It will move. It will stay a page, but your query string is populated. Query string is enabled to read here. Right? You can see in page 6 I'm actually reading a query string. Fine. So this is how you can actually do stuff in your server.transfer. Now there is one more difference which we have in server.transfer. Let's say if you want to move from the current page which is in one server to some other server, right? I am going to use response.redirect. Now first let's say I want to move to page which is in some other server. Let me take to some other URL, let's say. Let's say I'm taking you to SreeHub.com, right? Using my response.redirect. Let me run this. We have a page file here. Now let me click on page 6. When I click on this, right, what I'm doing, I'm actually trying to retrieve a page which is not in this server. Rather, it is actually in some other server as such. Right? It gets triggered from something called your SreeHub.com response redirect. Right? Now here, let's get back and see whether we are able to get it from the server. Now here, let me go to server dot transfer of, let me copy this part, let me comment it out. Right? So server dot transfer will never, so this is only used to move between different pages or different resources in the same server, not across the servers. Check out what happens when I use this part. So when I click on page 6, right, you can see it is not moving. Click on this, right, it will give error. Now, okay, as we are handling exception, right, now you don't understand that, so let me just remove this exception. Now this is not generally not effective to handle exception. So let's get back to page 5 and click on this. When you click, you can see you're getting some error, a virtual path expected, right? And I click on this, you'll get an error page, right? So this is not a same server, and it will not be able to find your path, right, to the same server, because this is something which is a separate domain, which is actually considering some other server, right, which will not work for us, right? So that's the reason why your server.transfer will not work for pages across servers. Right? You can't do that. That is the second technique called server.transfer. Right? Let's see the next technique, which is server.exchange or execute. So one more thing, which is server.execute. Now this server.execute is same as server.transfer. There is no difference in it. But server.execute have got one peculiar property to do that. What happens here is, the main difference is if server.transfer, whenever you call server.transfer and transfer to some other page, right? Let's say you are transferring from page 1 to page 2. Your page 1 hold will be completely cancelled and then it will go to page 2. But what happens to server.execute is, from page 1, right, it will actually move to page 2, right, but your control will not be lost, right, and when it actually moves to page 2, then the control will be handled over to page 2. That's what happens. Now whatever we said, let's see how it is working, right. Now let's go to this part, and in page 6, let's say I'm not going to use anything as such, right. Now let me use server.exchange, execute of same virtual path we have to give. It's a page 6.asps. Right? See what happens when I do this. So see, initially I'm in page 5, right? I'm in page 5 over here. Now here, let's say I click on page 6 with this button. See what happens? My page 6 will be rendered, but you have your page 5 also, right? So wherever you are actually rendering this, right, it will actually start from the page 5, right? It will wait till your page 6 is loaded, and then it will give option to page 6. Now you can see that your hold will be there in page 6. And you click on this again, right? You can see the hold will go to page 6. Right? This is how your execute method is used. Now let's talk about your rendering part of data. Let me use a previous page concept, right? Because this will be, let me use a request form concept here so that we can read everything. Now here, let's run this. Now let me click on the data part, click on this. Now you can see your data will be rendered over here. If I do some more number, let me for this, right? Your data will be rendered, but your page will be like, it will start from page 1 and it will start building page 2, And once page 2 is completely built, then it will terminate the page 1 and code will be transferred to page 6. Right? That's what happens. But this is something which is your execute. Right? Now let's see whether we can actually go ahead and do a cross-server browsing with this. Right? Now let's use this server.execute to actually go to this URL. We'll also see the query part. I mean, query string anyways will work for server.execute because it is same as this. Now let's run this. Let me click on page 6. Now continue. It will give you a same, which means your server.execute will not, right? It is same as server transfer, as I said, right? It will work in the same server. It will, if you go beyond the servers, then it will not be able to find a virtual path, and it will give you a, right? So using server transfer and server execute, right, you won't be able to move from one server to other server resources, right? It is not allowed actually, right? You can actually call your pages which is the same server as such, right? So that is our server.execute.
Srinath, I didn't understand this server execute.
Okay, which part?
Not going into the SreeHub.com while it was going into page 6.
Okay, see, page 6 is in my same server, right? Now, when I say page 6, which means it is in my server local machine and it is in the same directory, right? Now, page 6 is in my same directory called web controls, am I right? Which means
Yes.
I will be deploying these web controls in my, let's say, ABC server, right? Now, your server execute and server transfer, right? Whenever you're using this, it will try to search your resource in the same server. But your SreeHub.com is something which this resource is there in some other server, which I know this server will not be able to read, right? So that's the reason why it won't go to the cross servers to read the pages. Why it is reading page 6? Because it's in the same server and resource. It will find the page 6 in the same machine. That this still is nothing but I'm in the virtual path. I'm in the actual path of my project, right? And in that project I have page 6. You can see web controls my project and page 6 is there right beneath it, right? So it will be able to be.
But why was it redirecting it to SreeHub.com when you were using response.redirect?
So this response.redirect is something which moves across the servers too. Now this will actually take the true, see, I'll give you that. So when you use response.redirect, right, the main way how the response.redirect works is in two ways. Now that's the reason why I said whenever you use response.redirect, the cycle will be twice. One, post back cycle, and second thing, whatever resource I have mentioned, it will actually go to the true surfing of that resource. First one, whenever you click on button, right, it will actually complete the post back, and then it will pick, the response will be actually picked up to this resource. Now this resource it is picking and it is not going to check in the same server because you are redirecting to the complete resource where you are not least bothered about the resource. Now let's say if I give something wrong here, let's say I'm just giving something like I'm not giving a complete domain. I'll just give SreeHub.com. See what happens. I'll go to page. I don't have anything else, right? Yeah. Okay. When I click on this right now, you can see it will not say. Why? Because you can see that it will try to find the internal resource. It thinks that the URL whatever we gave is a subset of the current application, right? That's the reason why it is not understanding. But if you give a fully qualified URL, right, your response, your response object will be able to track your actual complete URL and it will actually move to the true URL. Now, even if I don't give HTTP, see what happens. See, it will understand that this is something which is an internal resource in the same page. But at least what it is doing is it is actually trying to search in internal, right? Now it is not getting any page or anything, any resource named this. So that's the reason why it says 404, which is not found, right? So that's the reason why we give fully qualified. And your response or redirect will actually go into the true translation of your resource you're providing, right? Because it is something which is a second cycle where in the first cycle you will be complete post back, and your second cycle it will directly take you to the actual resource you're providing. It can be the same server and across. It will be reading it as a true URL you're providing. Right? So that's how it works. Because your response object is will be able to actually read the protocol type you're using. If you don't give anything like a direct page, it will actually go and search in the current server. And if you're providing your protocol with some complete fully qualified URL, then it will go to that page. Now that property is there for response. Yeah. So this is something which is inbuilt libraries which we got in our page class. Right. This is something which ISP.NET provided in a page class where you can use few things for something and few things for that. Now you can see that your response or redirect actually loops on 2 cycles. That's the reason why your response or redirect is slower when compared to server transfer as such. Right? The server.transfer is much faster because it will just track your local machine or local server. Right? And it will have only one single track. Just your request to the server, and you'll get response for that resource you are actually checking for. So this is how it works in your server transfer and server data. So this is something which is your navigation techniques and what you have. And even in your execute method, right, we haven't seen that query string model, but yes, it will work as is in server exchange, right? So let's copy this. So even your server execute, right? Let me enable the query string part here. Run it up. So give some, right? It will be able to read the query string, right? But your resource will be at the same page, but it will be rendered across. Right? So this is how it will be rendered in your page and fine. So this is about your technique where you are actually using your query strings here. Now if you go back to the page of your combo box and all right. Now if you remember, let me just take this page 6 itself, right? And let me take the combo, sorry, not box, your drop down list here, right? And create a data source. Let me quickly create a data source database. Okay. And your college character string, I can use it directly. And let's say I want to use where condition on column called roll number is equal to data source from query string, right? Now in query string field, let's say it is roll, right? And see here it says request.query string of roll. It will directly give me this option, right? Now this is my expression I want to use, which is my roll number is equal to roll, where this is a 1. Click on OK. Right, now you can see the part here, roll number, right? Whenever I give specific roll number, it will actually get the data. And next, text the query, and you can see roll number, let me give 4 here, OK, and it will get me. So let me go back, and let's say I want students, not that. So and click on where condition to the roll number is equal to your query string, and go over here, add, click on OK, click next, right, test query, let's say 4 here, OK, it will give me, perfect, it will give me all the details here, right, click on finish, and roll number I'm mapping the roll number. Now you can see you can actually map roll numbers to anything else. Let's say I want to map the student name, right, and the field value is roll number. Click on OK. Now this completely works on your query string called roll. If you're not getting any roll, then you may get some error because you let me just go back again. If you want to set your default, right? Now here we have it, right? You can actually set your default if you want. Right? Now let's go back and run this. Now your page 6 is using role. You can see we have a role. Let's run this. Let's queue a role as 4. Click on go to page 6. Right, you can see you got a row. Right? Let's say I'm going to do 2. You can see 6. Right? Now this is how you can directly tag your query string to the data what are the actually. Right? So now this you can actually clone to any control you want. Now this is how you can actually use a data source and different controls. Okay. So this is about the controls, data sources which you can use, tag into database and all. This is what we have.